Welcome to the Portland Real Estate Podcast, Oregon and Southwest Washington's #1 show for real estate news and information. Without further ado, here are your hosts and a couple of guys who, as busy realtors and successful brokerage owners, know a thing or two about real estate. Steve Nassar of Premier Property Group and Joe Festolo of Soldera Properties. We're back. We never went anywhere. We're busy. We're running some businesses, waiting for some new material and good stuff to come along. We don't just want to do a podcast for the sake of doing a podcast. We want to have meaningful stuff to talk about. And we're kicking off 2026 with a new one, and we've got some great stuff, some great content.
Tons of great content. And coming off of the heels of our last podcast, where near the end of the year, the beginning of the year, everybody wants sort of a breakdown of what's the market going to be like and what's 2026 going to be like. And we did unpack the speculation from the economists. But now that we're here, almost to the end of January, what are you seeing in the market right now?
So, I mean, high level, we're busy. I mean, this even went into the holidays. I had more listing appointments than normal in around December. And so a lot of that is happening now. Those listing appointments that I was going on in December, that we're working on those houses. I'm not going to go so far as to say I have a ton in escrow for January or even at this point February. I don't want to mislead anyone by saying that. But there is green shoots out there. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of it definitely feels more like spring than January, and that's a common sentiment I'm hearing a lot of people say. January is historically a pretty quiet month. You're coming out of the holidays. A lot of times you have weather events. We've had wonderful weather, by the way. Blue skies most of the month. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, and this is not a weather podcast, Joe, maybe you didn't know that, but I'm sure there are weather podcasts. This is not one. But I think we had one of the driest Januaries maybe ever here in our area, as far as like days without rain in a row or something like that.
And so, warm. It's been freezing lately, but we had like 55 and 60 degree weather a couple of weeks ago. And it's like, what's this, Pineapple Express banana belt thing that's happening with it was warm and it was dry. It didn't feel like Oregon in January. That's for sure.
No, I agree. And that in of itself, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of times, not always, but you'll have a 4 or 5 day stretch in January that just shuts the city down. And we know, you and I both know, that shuts real estate down. No one's looking at homes. No one's showing homes. Listings are sitting. You're not usually actively getting a listing ready for market. You're not staging it. You're not working on it. So it really is a true 4 or 5 days of closing real estate down. So we haven't had that, and time will tell what February looks like and if we have that at all this year. I'm fortunately not a skier, snowboarder. Now you've got a mountain home. Are you? Because I've been hearing that the mountain's feeling that pain too, right?
Yeah, there's no snow. I have a season pass. My family has had season passes for like 10 years. And here's a note to the skiers out there. If I buy a season pass, don't buy a season pass. The year I don't buy a season pass, buy a season pass, because I picked it wrong. I can't tell you how many times. We're having a company second annual Soldera Ski Day. And it's February 18th. And February 18th, that day will cost me like $900. Now, if I ski again, then it'll be 450 days. So the idea is you got to get 10 of them under your belt to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
Perfect world, you want to get 15 under your belt, and we just haven't had the snow.
No. And I'm guessing they don't give you your money back on those when you make a bad bet on the weather.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So weather's been favorable. Back to that. Favorable for real estate, bad for skiing and snowboarding and winter sports. It's And so there's definitely activity. There's definitely listings coming online. There's definitely lots of appointments, and there is buyer activity. We are seeing an uptick in open houses. We are seeing offers. They're still a little low. I've had a few deals in the last few weeks where we just couldn't get it put together. The offer came in low, seller countered, and just several transactions where we grinded and just couldn't get it done, right? Now we've put a couple things into escrow, but again, I'm not gonna say I'm having a monster February. Definitely didn't have a monster January. Probably not even average-ish, maybe even a little less than that. But, and this is the big but there, it does.
The big butt.
there's there's a oh
Last
gosh,
year was a big butt.
there's a Sir Mix-a-Lot joke in there somewhere, right? Right,
Yes,
Joe?
that's great.
I like big butts. No. The big butt is that I do feel like the ingredients are out there to have a great March or April or May. I just feel like while there isn't a ton of escrow yet, the things are swirling around that create good months. You've got, we've got a bunch of great listings coming online. We're seeing, we're seeing mortgage rates coming down. Now there was a Fed meeting today. They, as expected, they kept the Fed funds rate where it's at. Rates are still in the low sixes. They had flirted with the high fives ever so briefly a few weeks ago, as a lot of people know, but now
Yep.
they're kind of back into the low sixes. Sentiment feels a little bit better towards real estate. This will help a lot of our listeners. I heard I heard it put a really good way the other day. When a year ago mortgage rates were 1% higher, okay? When mortgage rates drop 1%, that's about like every house out there having its price drop 10 to 12%. So a $600,000 house payment a year ago at 7% is now like a 540 house at that same mortgage rate, right? So
Exactly.
that's a big boot. That's a big blessing to the industry. I mean, there's no two ways about it. That's buying power, that's affordability, that's, a positive, tailwind to the industry as a whole that we've experienced. Um, there has to be demand out there. We've had 3 years in a row where we're at record low units sold nationally. Not record, but the lowest in 30 years, I believe, is what we've been hearing. And each year, each year has outdone the one before, right? Like,
Right.
I
Yeah.
think, I think the first year was like maybe it was 23 or 24. We had the lowest sales units sold nationally in 30 years. And then we're like, wow, that's pretty bad. It was even worse than the Great Recession. And then the next year we beat that year prior. And I think we've done
Right.
that a couple times now where we're setting new records that are worse than the year before. Each time thinking, well, this shouldn't this be the year that there's a little breakout in demand? And let's hope that for 2026. I think we're optimistic there could be. NAR did come out at Lawrence Yun came out at the end of last year, and he said he predicted that demand would be up 10-14% the number of units sold this year over last year. And that's meaningful. So, I don't think anyone's predicting it's going to be a banner year, but anything better than what it's been would be a huge blessing, right?
And
How about you?
there's lots of reasons for optimism, and I got all kinds of things swirling in my head, but 2026 is the year for ever so gradual improvement, meaning lower rates. A couple weeks ago, we hit 5.99 interest rate. Our inventory is settling. And what's great is a lot of people are like, I'm not going to buy in this economy, or I'm not going to sell in this economy. Well, guess what? For the next year, it is going to be constantly exactly the same, if not slightly improving. In the last podcast, we did like just a deep dive on economic forecast. And so you and I listened to Pat Stone and the other economists, and we were getting all of this material because you have to listen to the experts to become the expert to talk about it on the podcast. And one thing that was shocking is we hit 3.8% absorption rate for inventory, or 3.9. And then I went through the rolls of RMLS, and the last time we had it as high as 3.8 was January of 2014.
Wow. Yeah.
Inventory plays a big role, but 2025 and 2024 are behind us. And what happens when you're under adversity? People shelter in place. They're like, I'm not doing anything. And January 20th, we got a new president, and he was like mumbling tariff, tariff, tariff. And our
Mm-hmm.
rates were ridiculously high, and our inventory was high. That's kind of behind us, and it's sort of old hat. He's been a president for a while now. The tariff stuff settled, and now it kind of seems a little bit more normal as our inventory ever so slightly improves, our interest rate ever so slightly improves, and nobody has any reason to wait because January is going to be the same as December,
And
although
stock
December
markets
will
are at record
show.
highs, and they've been at record highs. I mean, and you can't understate that, especially you get into into the higher end market, where a lot of those people are pulling cash out to either pay cash or put a lot of cash down from their portfolios. That's huge. When stock markets are down to and we've seen that over the years. When stock markets correct and they're down 20%, everybody sits on their hands and they don't want to access their money while it's down.
Yeah.
But we've been seeing, high levels of the index funds or of the indices
There's no
in the stock
reason.
market.
Everyone wants a reason. There's absolutely no reason not to buy or not to sell this year. And life doesn't slow down for real estate. You have death and divorce, or you lose your job, or you get married and have babies and get transferred. There's three good ones, three bad ones. But when that happens, you have a real estate need, and you can't always sell high and buy low. You just got to do it. But 2026 is an amazing time to do it because we're better than we were the prior years, and we're getting ever so slightly better. Now, the people I kind of worry about is the 2020 to 2022 buyers.
Yeah,
When
me
we
too.
had multiple offers, it would go 150, 200 grand over ask. They guarantee an appraisal gap. They waive their inspections. All of these terrible things that you don't want to be involved in, unless, of course, you're a seller. Uh, so those people, and then we corrected 23 to 25. Some of those people that won the beauty contest out of the dozen offers have to be a little bit underwater.
Hmm.
If you're
I've got a
going
few
to,
of those I'm working with right now. Yeah.
yeah. And, but this year started off gangbusters. I've been face to face with all kinds of people, wonderful people. And, that's part of the market too. Sometimes when the market's really stinky, every seller is cranky and every buyer, wants to steal it. I'm dealing with absolutely fabulous people, great properties. The sellers have since got the memo that we did correct in 2023 to 2025. 2023 and 2024 were difficult because although we were no longer in that 2020 to 2022 COVID frenzy, everyone kind of knew that, but the sellers, they still wanted to pioneer new price ranges when those weren't effective anymore. So I think everybody has both feet planted, and where we are with the absorption rate is more or less kind of balanced, right? I don't
Hmm.
know that it's slightly more to the seller or slightly more to the buyer. I think it's more or less balanced. I don't really want our inventory to spike or deplete from where it is because it seems like everybody's fairly realistic right now. And if they have a need to sell, they will or buy. So,
Hmm. Are you
uh,
do you have a lot in escrow for this time of year, Joe? Is it translating into escrow and closings, or is it just the activity right now for you? Because it's for me, it's more the activity that is feels
Um,
like spring.
I have like a half a dozen in escrow, but my excitement is more with those meetings with
Yeah,
people, just awesome buyers.
yeah,
And well, I showed your listing. You have the $2 million
yeah,
listing
yeah.
on
Rosemont.
Rosemont.
Yeah,
So, going out with great people
yeah,
and showing them awesome houses, figuring out what they like, and is there a fit, or do we have to wait for either a reduction or a new listing? And
yeah.
um, going through the motions of doing things to make money uh, ends up being money months down the road.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
all the
And that's
listing
yeah,
appointments.
yeah.
Because honestly, the people you talk to now are the people who are kind of preparing. Hey, I have a deadline where I'm going to go to this assisted living or I'm going to move, but I got to do it in this month. And I really want to sell in March or April or May, but I want to talk to you now. I want to interview people, see what you do, pick my person, and then get ready for that date. And then once you get ready, then you're off to the races.
Hmm. And I think we're saying the same thing. The tea leaves are great. The activity, the buzz, the excitement, the just the momentum of the market feels good. It hasn't yet for me turned into, closings or escrows even for that matter, but I do feel it's coming. I do feel it's coming. And I'm seeing, and sometimes that's personal too. Sometimes I told you at the beginning of this, we had four deal. It feels to me like there's three or four, and they're pretty decent sized deals that we got offers. Which, by the way, that's half the battle is getting an offer and having somebody to negotiate with when you've got a listing. Um, and we just quite couldn't get it done. Now, the ball could have bounced the other way, and I could have three in escrow right now, right? Or those come back. So it's it's things are moving in the right direction this year, and I do feel good about that, and I do think there's just the dynamics of what's about to happen with the Fed chair changing, and there's going to be a changing of the guard. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying everything's going to magically change instantaneously, but the person, because there's still a voting mechanism, and so a lot of those same people will still be around voting, right? But the person, they're called the chair for a reason. They guide the meetings, they lead the meetings. That person is definitely going to want rates lower. There's no two ways about it. They are going to be handpicked by the president, and he is very much wanting to help housing and bring down mortgage rates. So there will, and one big thing that happened, Joe, in the last month or two, and I actually talked about this on our last podcast. There are other tools out there besides the Fed funds rate that can bring mortgage rates down. The
Yeah.
reason
Employment
mortgage
rate.
rates buying mortgage-backed securities, the Fed buying mortgage-backed securities is a big one of those. And when rates did drop down into the fives, is because the president said, "Hey, we want to buy 200 billion in mortgage-backed securities to bring down rates," and it works. They did
Yeah.
that during the Great Recession. I remember that in 2008, 2009, rates dropped dramatically, maybe even half to 1%, because the Fed started buying mortgage-backed securities. It was around the time they were starting to come out with remember when we gave away free money to buy houses for first-time home
Yeah.
buyers? Which,
Right.
by the way, that could come along too. I'm not saying it is, but those are things that could start if you have a new change of the guard and they're focused on housing. And there is a general belief out there, and I don't disagree with it, that a lot of the economy is doing pretty well, with the exception of housing, for a few years now, right? So there are ways, if they said, well, we want to prop up housing a little bit more, we want to get people moving some houses, yes, that helps us. Yes, it helps mortgages. Yes, but it also helps Home Depot. It helps Lowe's. It helps. There's a lot of, furniture stores and all sorts of, there's a whole segment of the economy that has been pretty frozen for a few years. And if a change of the guard happens and there's a movement to loosen that up, I think they can do that, and I think they will do that. So you could see and again, I've not heard this anywhere. Don't take this any further than saying you could see some creative mechanisms to move houses like we saw back in 0809, for
In the
different
last two
reasons.
years, so here's a difference, and I think I know why, but in 24, 25, I think just about all of my sales were cash. And there's a lot of cash out there, in every price range, 2, 3, and $4 million just paying cash. I'm starting to see more bank financing now. And the difference is, let's say whenever you bought your house, the rates were low, they were great. You locked in at, 3.75. You're super smart. That's a low rate. Well, the delta between 3.75 and 5.99 isn't that terrible. Like, you can take your equity, sell your house, go buy something, and put down a substantial amount of money on that house and then get a loan for the remainder. That isn't such a big deal. But I think it was August of 2024. Remember, we hit like 8.25% for
Oh
it
God.
was like 2 weeks. Well, there's a big difference between 8.25 and 3.75, and people are like, golden handcuffs. I'm not going to give up this interest rate. But the fact of the matter is, people change. They have mobility issues. They need a different style home. They need better climate. They have to move, and now they can, because even if they're locked in at a low rate, or have it free and clear, and they're buying something else like downsizing and getting a one level, uh, you could just pay cash for the whole thing, or get a loan for a very small amount. And okay, so it's 2.25 higher than what your rate was. Big deal. The prices kind of have come down to account for the higher rate. So I think it's a great time to buy and sell. And I think this is going to be a year of consistency with slow improvement.
I agree, and I 1,000% agree with that statement, Joe. I don't think there's going to be any massive influx of demand or sales higher than, but it'll be incremental improvement, incremental, and it might be a decent increment too. Yeah.
Yeah, and with that, that leads to what the NAR announced, and it was Deb Kuntz Taylor that posted it on January 18th, and it's the 2025 NAR number of deals per agent. So listen to this: 71.1% of all active licensed realtors closed zero transactions. Nada. Squadoosh.
Yeah, that's a
Zero.
lot. That's a big number.
And then it's broken down to kind of a 90-10. There's 10% of us that sell 90% of all the real estate, more or less. And 71% didn't do anything. And then I guess you have the percentage of 11% to 29% that sort of make up the rest, if that makes sense. If the top 10% does 90%, 11 to 29% kind of does all the rest, while 71% did not have a closing. I've seen the statistic, and I think there's a statistic for 2024 that is almost exactly the same as this. And it's like, when people just say the average per deal closing per broker is like 1.5 units, but you have 71% doing zero, and you're doing 100, there's going to be 75 people or 50 people that get credit for, on average, 1.5 units when they haven't done anything. And so when you're in this specialized field, it's so, so very important on both sides, from the consumer side for a buyer or the listing side, that you get someone who is an expert in the business. And then from the real estate side, if you're not in the top 10% or at least the top 29%, you're going to be clocking in at zero transactions. So be better or find a job that can pay you more than real estate.
How
I
do they
mean,
hang in there? There is a couple caveats here. I want to point this out. And I'm one of them, right? Because I've got like 10 agents underneath me on my team that would show up as zero because they close under my name. And okay,
yeah,
and there's a lot more like me, right? So
yeah,
that's one of the caveats. So nobody would argue that those 10 agents aren't busy and aren't doing real estate. The
right. They're
volume's
making
just
lots
going
of
up.
money. They don't
Yeah,
get the
and they're
credit.
making money. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's
We
also
understand that.
property managers who don't sell. There's also appraisers. And there's others, right? There's referral only status. I know we've got a division of our company that has several hundred agents that just refer business.
Yeah,
So
we do too.
but even if that 71% is truly 50%, right? That's still a big number. How do you think they hang in there? Or do they? Do
They
you know
have a
what?
partner that makes money. They were, as Tucker Merrihew would say, born on third base, uh, or Silver Spoon or Lucky Sperm Club or whatever you want to say, that
Yeah,
someone was born from an affluent family and they're a trustafarian, so they could do absolutely nothing, and the trust keeps giving, and if
yeah.
your trust gives you 50 grand a quarter, 200 grand a year for, just not doing anything isn't bad. But if you rely on yourself and you've had to work for everything you've had, but you're making zero, I think this might fall into, and of course it's skewed. The people on teams get zero units, no appraisers, no managers. They don't show up, so this is skewed. But I think you have school teachers that want to sell real estate in the summer, Uber drivers, waiters, just people get their license. And it's like, when I make more money in real estate, then my hairstyling business will be my side hustle and real estate will be my main hustle. But it never gets there. Real estate is a horrible part-time job. I mean, could you imagine you needed a
No.
heart surgery, going to a part-time heart surgeon? What we're doing is not heart surgery. We're not a doctor, but guess what? We are selling someone's highest material asset, which happens to be most people's largest material asset. That's something you probably don't want to screw up, as well as, your health.
I agree.
And you need to find someone who is trustworthy, that will protect you and get you the results, and making sure, if you're a seller, getting you the most, if you're a buyer, getting the best deal you can. Um, but the level of deep dive that buyers and sellers should be doing on their brokers, it should be a high level, because statistically, 90% of the brokers aren't making money over the poverty level.
Yeah. Hey, Joe,
Given
so
these,
on this uh infographic that you shared, or I guess Deb shared on
yeah,
January 18th, it does say here our agent count as of November 2025 is 1.3 million. Do I remember it was up to 1.5 million during COVID? So that was like the highest, I think. So it is down a couple 100,000. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to know here in probably 2-3 weeks how many renewed their dues, because isn't the due date end of January for PMAR
yeah, yeah,
and EMAR? And
750. And when you're making zero money and then all of a sudden you're facing a 750 all at once bill, that's kind of the big leveler where maybe I'll go get.
including if you're a teacher or a hairdresser, I mean, you might hang in there for a while, but if you're just not closing anything for a meaningful amount of time, that's a big number to write a check for to again, right?
It
So
is.
I think in the next 2-3 weeks, it'll be interesting to see. There's going to be some statistics coming out. Does that 1.3 million licensed agents, does it drop to 1.2? Does it go lower? That will be interesting to pay attention to, because you have to think there's going to be some major attrition there, right? With
Well, remember Kurt von Wasmuth, the CEO of RMLS. We've had him on the podcast like 4 times or 5 times. Just a great guest, so full of information. And on the podcast, he kind of leaks out all the stuff that's coming down the pipe. So everybody, all of our listeners and everybody in Masters in Real Estate kind of get to know what's coming down the pipe sooner than later. And I think at one time he said we clocked in at like 18,000 realtors in the kind of the Oregon, Southern Washington area. That corrected to 16. That corrected. And I don't know what there are now, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were like 14,000. It
mm-hmm.
just it seems to be, if there's one speed and it's going fast. And if you're not going fast, you're really not sustaining what you need to make to stick around. And I think the people that aren't doing it are getting out. And which, look, I'm all about raising the bar. And I mean, that's why I created Masters. I think it was 14 years ago. We just had our anniversary January 20th. I think it's 14 or 15 years ago. And it's to collaborate, talk about the law, talk about the new forms, talk about new tech, cooperating with each other so we all grow old and rich together. And it's just not a good job to you just mail it in all the time, because you won't be successful. You have to get up and grind every day. And if you don't, it's, there might be, do the little, what is it, the Rorschach test or something, where they figure out which quadrant you think in. And, maybe you need to be an artist, or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, maybe you like driving, to deliver packages, do something, but you're not in the right quadrant if 71% of the people aren't making zero. That's a nonprofit company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're CEO of a nonprofit company because you've made zero profit.
Yeah.
But I think it's exponentially important that people that have a real estate need really drill down and interview to make sure you're getting someone good, because 1 out of 10 is in that category, according to these statistics.
Yeah, and I mean, to use your analogy, you wouldn't want a heart surgeon who hadn't done a heart surgery in a year or two. They shouldn't
Yeah,
be working with a realtor who hasn't sold a house in a year or two, right? So,
yeah.
well,
You
let's
get a
move
you
on
get
from that. Let's
a
talk
fresh out of
about
medical school, the fresh out of medical school LASIK surgery doctor, and you're the first patient, but he's giving you a BOGO deal. Do one eye, get the other eye free, buy one, get one. It's like, no, I want to pay the most I can possibly pay and get the guy that won't screw that up.
if you caution word of advice to our listeners. If any doctor says I'll give you a BOGO deal on a heart surgery, run,
Yeah,
because you don't
yeah,
want two heart surgeries. You only
yeah,
have one heart. There's no
right.
there's no reason to have a BOGO there. Hey, let's move on, Joe. Let's talk about everybody's favorite subject. Mine
Okay.
included. And I am being facetious. And that is condos. We had
Yeah.
a couple posts in best of or in Masters in the last few 30, 60 days. Both of them were in the last 30 days, actually. Both of them were January. One was Brooke Marlowe. I hope I'm saying that right. On January 7th, she said, "What kind of special magic are you doing to sell your Portland condo with high HOA and limited parking? Asking for a friend." Um, we're
It's a tough
also
one.
going to chat a little bit about the Ritz. There's been a lot of changes with the Ritz downtown. It's been a that's been a that's been a challenged project, to say, in every way, shape, and form. And so there's been some changes with their representation and their pricing, and we're gonna chat about that a little bit as well too. But Joe, I've got a bunch of condos. I would divide. I would start by saying all condos are tough, and then I would put another layer of challenge would be the inner core Portland condos.
Downtown.
Yeah,
Yeah.
downtown, and that's just look. If there was detached houses downtown, they'd be tough too. That's nothing to do with the condo. So you're layering issues there, right? Um,
Yeah.
why don't you kick this one off, Joe? Tell us about your experience
Well,
and what the post was saying and the
so,
sentiment.
it says, what special magic do you have to do to sell a stinking condo these days? Especially downtown. And there isn't a secret sauce. That market has been hit so hard, condos, townhomes associated with HOAs, because the Florida hurricanes, the Texas fires and floods, it's like these big HOA corporations are having a hard time insuring it, which means they start jacking up the price. But then another layer is you have downtown and you have the problem with, the uncleanliness, and do you really want to walk out of your condo and see people on the sidewalk and trash and stuff? There's another layer after that, because if something wasn't budgeted correctly, and look, the people that mainly make up a lot of HOAs, especially for the smaller units, are the people that own units there. They want to have a say in what goes on in their complex. And they're not great at predicting, everything that you need to think about. When will the complex need new windows, a new roof? When do they have to repave the parking lot? When do they need to change the carpet? Just all the things. And if they don't budget correctly, then when the time comes that they all need a roof, you can't like wait on the roof in Oregon and just say, oh, in 5 years we'll have the money. No, you have to put a roof on it, get a loan, and then you specially assess every door. So it's like, okay, to live here, to have the privilege of living here, everyone's getting assessed $45,000 for your square footage of what it takes for the roof, the entire roof bill divided by doors. You get a $45,000 special assessment. And guess what? We're increasing the HOAs $400 a month because we have to build this reserve. It's impossible. And then the condos out there, some of those complexes are already underwater with special assessments. And there was a condo downtown. It was like, I forgot what it was. The price went way down. It was like 400,000. I think the HOAs are like $1,000 a month
Mm-hmm.
because they're just trying to play catch up. And
And
no one's
that's the
buying
flip
that.
side. That's the flip side. And that's the double-edged whammy of a condo is okay, have your HOA dues low, but then you're going to have special assessments because you're not taking in enough money. The opposite of that is have your HOA dues high so there's no special assessments or low likelihood, but then you've got high HOAs. So that's really the challenge of condos. And it feels to me, and I'd be curious your opinion, Joe. Feels to me like 10 years ago the market okay, wasn't as averse to this. Somehow the word has gotten out there and buyers just know about this. There's been enough burned who told their friends, who told their friends, and they're googling it. And I don't know where the word is out there. I guess maybe this podcast too, but I mean they're just aware that like there's a lot of risk with condos. You either are going to have a high HOA or you're going to have a special assessment. It's probably going to be one of the two.
Or
And
both.
or both. and and they're really trying hard not to do condos for that reason. And you throw into the mix that you don't have your own, backyard, your own, there's other components to condos. And I'm talking now a little bit outside of the downtown core because I've got a condo in Lake Oswego in Oswego Summit that we've had for 7-8 months, right? I've got a condo in Beaverton that we've had for a while, and it's gosh, it's in the low 200s. It's nothing. It's very affordable, but your dues bring that effective price up considerably. Your output monthly. So somehow the sentiment towards condos in general, even outside of downtown Portland, has cooled in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. It feels like to me.
I think the condo market was booming, but I think it was longer than that. I think it might have been 15 years ago. Remember when the Pearl became a thing and they
Oh
just
yeah.
built like crazy,
Oh
and
yeah.
you can get a ground floor 900 square foot flat, and it was like $400 a foot back then. But the higher you go up and you get closer to penthouses, they're like $1,000 a foot, and it was all the rage. And people are like, I don't have to have a car. I could walk to 50 of the best restaurants within, a quarter of a mile. And I can walk everywhere and I can telecommute or I can take Uber or transportation. It was like really hot and now it's not. And you want to cut bait before it really gets bad because I think the condo people, um, I think they should potentially wait it out, or if they're getting slowly bled dry by special assessments and HOAs, I think they need to hang on until downtown gets cleaned up and they don't take such a bath. Because the only ones that are selling are the ones that are at such an attractive price that they're going to buy yours over the others. I sold one in the McKinsey a year ago or so, and it was really funny because I listed it and we were 2 weeks into the listing and they're like, gosh, this is weird. We haven't had any showings and I thought we were supposed to have multiple offers like by now. And they didn't get the memo that that's not the market anymore. And we finally got it sold, but I just said, okay, well, here, let me do something for you. I looked at condos in downtown only in like a very, very small circle. And I went 600 or less condo. There were 325 condos on the market. And some of them were priced the same as us, but they were a corner unit. So they got double the windows on the corner and they were higher up. They got better the view. I mean, it's just, you really have to be the most attractive that they pick yours out of 325 others or you ain't going to sell. And a lot of people don't have the stomach for it unless they absolutely have to sell.
Yeah. This that was made by Brooke, some of the comments are downright depressing. Like when it as it pertains to what people bought these condos for sometimes years and years ago, sometimes 20 years ago, and what
Mm-hmm.
they're selling for now. This one, Jesse Dow, he put it's brutal. I sold a unit. Now this is a 2020. No, no, no. This is 18. Sorry. It's brutal. I sold a unit to a client back in 2018 for 325. It was a double unit, so it had double HOA, and it was all based on square foot, no parking. We got the pricing all the way down to 200,000. They bought it for 325, and it never sold. That I mean, building was built in the early 1900s. Taxes and insurance and HOA were 1,600 a month.
Yeah.
Taxes, insurance, and HOA were 1,600 a month. Um, and the unit was rented for 2,800 a month with no takers, so they can't even rent the space.
Yeah.
Um, they had another story like this. Also had another unit in the Pearl that it rented at 7,000 a month, 3,000 square feet with two parking spaces, priced at 1.1 million. They bought it in 18 at 1.35. Taxes, insurance, and HOA are 3,000 a month. And it's
Wow.
basically saying both of those can't sell. And he said, sadly, they're both considering foreclosure, right? And that was not the only story. There's a lot of stories, and I've heard these elsewhere, of people who bought condos in the Pearl 20 years ago that are way upside down on them. They
Yeah.
can't sell them. In some cases, they can't rent them.
I did an
Um,
article for Real Producers a while ago about HOAs and what to consider. And the net of the article was, you could have the cutest condo at an amazing price in the ideal location that you want. But if the HOA is not healthy and buoyant and above water, run. You know, you don't want to buy a ticket for the Titanic. And you could buy something, and if there's a special assessment coming or the HOAs get doubled or tripled or both, you're now stuck with something that you can never get rid of. And um, anyway, and when there was another time when they just said condos, they related it to a disease that you can catch that never goes away. And it's like, you know, condos is a lot similar to this disease because you'll never get rid of it. And it just we're back there again. And I feel sad for the people that bought it, and I feel bad for the complexes that mismanage their money, or you know, sometimes you find out that the the contractor installed the windows upside down or the siding failed or something. And then you're in litigation and nothing can sell during litigation. And litigation
Mm-hmm.
could be a year and a half. And
Mm-hmm.
so then
And some
you
have
can't
rental
sell.
caps, and some you can't rent either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this leads me to the other, you know, high end uh, price range of the Ritz. I mean, what are their HOAs? You have any idea?
No, I don't.
It's got to be 3 grand or 5 grand. I mean,
Yeah.
it's got to be way up there.
It has to. It has to. Yeah. So this project and way back in the day, Joe, I don't know if you were on or maybe it was Tucker and I. It was during the early days of COVID. We had Sarita on because she
Yeah,
remember she was the original listing agent of the Ritz.
yeah,
And we had her on and she was promoting them and they had just barely broken ground if at all, right? Maybe this
right.
was in 20 or 19 or something like that. Then Terry Sprague got the listings and
Hmm.
bless their hearts. These people poured their heart and soul into these projects and into these listings. I'll I'll tell you a funny Terry Sprague story. I think at one time I was chatting with him about a transaction we were doing,
Uh-huh.
and we talked a little bit about the Ritz, and I was like, "How's that going?" He goes, "Oh man, I'm grinding. I'm trying to get it done." And I was like, "Well, you landed a whale at least. I mean, it's a big account. It's got a lot of, there's a lot of units. It's, it's prestigious. It's shiny." He goes, "A beached whale."
Yeah,
And so and there's nothing these people could do to sell these units the way it was configured. I mean, so much of that. We just spent how much time talking about the challenges of a condo, right?
yeah,
Now throw into that, you're at the highest price point in Portland. You are in a building that eventually went into foreclosure. Um, and you've got all of the challenges of Portland, and they're not. Look, some of these challenges aren't getting better right now. I mean, there's you see what's happening in Minnesota, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Well,
oh yeah,
Portland's not that far off of what some of that stuff that happens in those cities, right? I mean, Portland is kind of right there with. Usually, what I'm saying is usually when there's protests, Portland is not the last one to jump in. So
correct. Yeah,
I'd say we're probably fairly fortunate that they've been as limited as they have been thus far, but that could change on a notice. And that's been so much of the challenges, that the homelessness, the taxation of Multnomah County. I mean, just challenges upon challenges, to the point where Barbara Roach posted about. Okay, and let me finish. So now there's a new listing agent on the Ritz project, and they are dropping prices in half, is what I'm being told. First of all, how bad does that stink for the people? The few people, there wasn't many, but there was a few people that did buy at
yeah,
the original pricing. That's got to be just an absolute gut punch that you're now upside down by 100% because they're about to drop the prices in half.
yeah.
But beyond that, I still question if half is the right number. So they're still selling these units that are, whatever, 1,000, 2,000 square feet for over $1 million. One of my comments, Joe, was the entire Big Pink building sold for 40 million. I mean, that's a monster building all on its own.
10% of what it sold for 6 years ago.
Yeah.
It sold for 475 and then it sold for 45
Yeah.
again.
I mean, so that does not tell you that the health of Portland is coming back in in any meaningful way. So does a couple 1,000 square foot condo at $1 million sound like a good deal? If entire tallest buildings in the city are selling for 40 million, I and you hear all these other stories of the Pearl. I just think this is a challenged market, and I applaud them for bringing their prices down. They absolutely need to do that. But I don't know if that knife has stopped falling. And you know what they say about
Yeah.
catching a falling knife, right?
Well, yeah. Uh, I think the net of it is condos and HOAs and townhomes. It's so difficult right now, and if you need to sell, you really have to be realistic. And if you buy, make sure the place is healthy. But I'm kind of putting that on a placeholder and really focusing on residential homes for people or condos outside of the central downtown area because it's too tough.
Yeah. Um, Chris Dyer commented on that post. Highly doubtful I'd steer a client towards a condo these days. Perhaps if they had money to burn, and I told them there won't be any gains and likely a loss of 100x and documented it.
Yeah,
So
well, it's I can't in good faith recommend to a buyer to buy it for if they ask me about appreciation. But it's our job to educate people and they make their own decisions. And look, maybe someone gives away a condo for a song, and maybe the HOA is healthy enough that it will stay afloat for 5 more years, more years, and then you're the genius that bought a condo for 195 in the Pearl, and now it's worth 495 10 years later as it corrected. If you think that's going to help, but
yeah, John McKay, great agent. I know him well. He said there are some very nice nearby condos selling for 500,000, while the Ritz are selling for 1.3. Now, yes, do the Ritz have some better amenities? Is it a newer, shinier building? Yes, but that's a big disparity, right? Between the 500,000 1.3. So I think one thing I said in my post is if you are buying in downtown Portland, you are betting on downtown Portland making a comeback. And look, nobody wants that comeback more than you and I, Joe, right? We're rooting for it. But I don't know if I'm ready to root with my money or advise my clients to root with their money, or bet with their money, would I should say. Because I just don't see the evidence yet that Portland's making a meaningful comeback. I mean, meaning the homelessness is being addressed and some of these other issues. I think, I think that's still a long ways down the road where we see meaningful change in those regards. And so that's a long time to wait for your investment to come back around. Let let's move
well,
on to
and
Portland.
that leads us to Mark Scholl's post about expireds.
Yeah.
A lot of times we have listings, you have it for a period of time, and the seller says, "Hey, you know what? I have family coming in town. They're going to be here. I got some improvements to make. Let's make this expire and then relist in the spring." And we have that all the time, right? People have to sell when it's convenient, and they thought they maybe would have sold by then, but now they have family coming, they got improvements. And so the one thing I don't like about the system in RMLS is when you make it expired, all of these agents, all of these bots, you start getting mailers, you start getting calls, you start having people show up on your door, they send you cookies or do pop buys. It's just terrible. And if you go back to the NAR statistics, the 71% that isn't closing a lot of business, these are those people that, try and call expireds, which isn't, in 2026 isn't the most profitable way to go find leads because you're competing with 150 other people. And after the first three phone calls, the moment the expired gets released, they turn their phone off. So if you're not one of the first three, no one's listening to you. But he was talking more about integrity and professionalism because someone who did get a hold of his seller that he already had a contract to relist again in a few months, there's a lot of negative selling there. Well, you didn't sell because Mark wasn't doing his job. And they said, you were only listed on 2 MLS sites, but there's a total of 19 MLS sites. He only had you on 2 of them.
What a
Well,
crock of crap, right?
I've been doing
I
this a
had
long
that
time.
exact.
What the hell
I
is he
feel like
talking about? I don't know of 19 sites. Is he talking about the syndicates and
uh,
allowing it to go to the
why didn't you
syndicates?
put it on the Oregon Coast MLS? Why didn't you put it on I mean, Jesus, I don't know what to say, Joe. Like one MLS will put you on all the search sites. It pushes you out to Zillow, Redfin, realtor.com, on and on and on, right? One MLS,
Yeah.
any of them. Which should in most cases do the trick. Now, there are areas where being on two can be helpful, like Salem, for example, because they have their own
Yeah.
MLS, but it's helpful to be in Portland.
Or the
But
coast or Bend. Yeah.
you don't need to be on 19 sites, and that's just a ploy. And by the way, I this is a real thing because the same thing happened to me. I have a listing. It's actually a one of the Street of Dreams homes from kind of the wine country a couple years
Yeah.
ago, and in I think 22, yeah, 2022, we had Street of Dreams out in Sherwood, which is kind of overlooking wine country. I have a listing there. It was with a different agent. It expired. They hired me in the interim as I was working to get my contract signed. His phone was getting blown up and this exact script was used. In fact, he started asking me, he's like, how many MLSs are you putting me in? Should I be in more? I'm sure it was this exact same person. And they're using this BS line as like a sugar pill to just
Yeah.
get attention. Like this is the
Your
reason why.
broker, you expired because your broker didn't do
Yeah.
all the things that he should have and list with me.
Yeah. I mean,
But what's interesting is the guy didn't identify his name. And then if you trace the phone number back, the phone number goes nowhere. So he's calling from like a auto robot AI, or something that masks the number because when he tried to research it, it didn't go anywhere.
I'm going to give it an analogy here. Putting your listing in 19 MLSs is the equivalent of putting 19 for sale signs in the front yard.
Yeah.
There's a component of duplicity that does not help. It actually, I don't know if it hurts per se, but it's not helping. It's not. I mean, one makes it known that it's for sale, right? The other 18 are just extra nothings. And
Yeah.
in the
If I
case of the
ask
signs
you,
in the yard, it would look stupid. But um, so this person is just using this as a fear mongering, get them to
yeah,
talk to you, plant seeds of doubt. It's crap. It's crap. And they're out there.
it
I
gives
had
us all a bad name. I don't
It
love it.
does. It does.
I
And
also think it's
shame on
ineffective.
you for doing that and not actually, having a meaningful conversation about what you meaningfully would do different, not some, smoke and mirrors. So, okay,
Okay.
Senate Bill 426, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about
Uh,
Senate Bill 426. So this is now law. Is that correct, Joe? Was it January 1st that this went into law?
uh,
I
I
think maybe something like
I
that.
did
Yeah.
it pass?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Senate Bill 426 makes contractors and property owners jointly liable for unpaid wages.
Yeah.
And I don't love that.
Yeah. So here's my understanding of how this is. it's always been that if you hire a contractor to work on your house, you sign a lien form that says if you don't pay that contractor, they can put a lien on your house. And it's a very powerful mechanism that becomes first lien position, right?
Yeah.
Now they've changed it so that even if you paid your contractor, but your contractor didn't pay their employees, they can come after you.
Yeah, I don't like that.
No,
I
and the
think,
general sentiment around this law was that this is stupidity out of Salem. It's probably intends well, but it's not. It's I Andon Martin said once again the Oregon legislature fixing a problem for everyone that rarely happens. Salem is rarely on the side of doing what is right. There was another person that said this was a law searching for a problem, right? This was a new, this is an answer searching for a problem. Because I agree. How often is that happening? The only scenario where a contractor isn't paying their employees is if it seems to me like as if they're going out of business, right?
well,
How do you not pay your employees
yeah,
and then continue forward?
but there's good reasons. Maybe they finished half the job. Maybe they did it so poorly that it doesn't pass inspection. But if you look at the homeowner who hires a general contractor and says, hey, look, I don't know all this stuff, but you do. This is what I want. What does it cost? And then you sign something with the general contractor, and then he's supposed to find the subs and find the materials and fall within the budget of what you said. And if that person doesn't pay the subs, whether it's good reasons or bad reasons, bad reasons is he just didn't pay him, right? Good reasons would be they didn't finish the job or they did a horrible job. Uh, I can't possibly pay them. Now you're on the hook too. That's kind of like your third party to that hire and managing of the subs. That's the
Mm-hmm.
the general's
Mm-hmm.
position. And I think I think it was one of those things that it happened to somebody, they got mad, they wrote a bill, it wasn't written correctly, they pushed it through,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
uh,
I wouldn't. Here's my take, everyone. I wouldn't freak out about this. I don't see this coming into play. Again, because if the general contractor has employees and they're not paying them, then they're they have to be going out of business. So just as long as your homeowners are doing good due diligence to find somebody that's going to be around and has been around and is likely to stay around in business, this shouldn't really come into play. I'm not I'm not excusing this bill and I'm not saying it was a good decision and hopefully maybe it gets repealed for with some you know as Oregon has.
I'm all for paying people that do their job, and the people that do their job and then don't get paid, that's a tragedy. But there are other reasons to not pay someone based on the quality of their job. But do you go one step backwards to the homeowner who hired the general to manage this?
I mean,
It's
think it through. Like that's the other challenge of this. Think it through. Okay, somebody general's working on my house. He has two employees. Finally, he's all done. They did a good job. I want to pay the general, but I'm worried about this law. Do I try to pay the employees directly? Do I go whoa 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 whoa? No 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 no, because I need to make sure they don't lean my house. So you need to tell me what you were paying those two. You got them directly? No, that doesn't work, right? So now, how do you confirm that they paid them? Because you're giving the general the money, the general contractor. What if he doesn't pay them? What do you go back to the general contractor and say, "Give me my money back so I can pay"? It just doesn't. The homeowner's ability to control that doesn't math out and doesn't work. So that's why the
well,
law is really dumb.
well, with this law, and I think Garrett Chadney said something to the effect that if this is in place, then you need to sign something with your general contractor that if you pay your general contractor and that general contractor does not pay the subs, that it is the sole responsibility of the general contractor to pay the subs if they did their job and it's owed to them. I mean, and I don't know if you can write anything with the general contractor that will override the law. You could probably still get sued and still be on the hook, but
Yeah.
I don't think it was a very well written law.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Well, it won't be the first or last one that Oregon pushes out like that. Hey, let's move on. You did a class yesterday, right, Joe? On realtor.com plus?
I did. So RMLS is trying real hard to provide value, get rid of the systems that nobody uses that doesn't work, and trying to get us some value. And Realtor.com Plus has got together with RMLS, and it sort of solves a problem of when you have buyers looking for a house, you build a profile, and it will email them once a day, real time, the days you pick the frequency, and it will email them the houses that they like. But they don't use it all the time because the buyers just want to go to Zillow and see great big photos, and it's just friendlier. And so there's a lot lost in Zillow, and the information has been proven not to be 100% accurate. So what RMLS Plus will do through our licensing of RMLS as an added service without additional cost is you have a buyer, you want to do a search for them, you go to realtor.com plus, you put their names, you put their email and their contact information, and then you create the search. And then it sends them listings and it's branded to you. Everything they get is branded to you, as well as you can go to the back office in the dashboard and you can see the ones they favorited. You can see the ones they forwarded to a spouse, the ones they looked at 5 times. You could see how they changed their criteria because they have control of their search criteria. And it just gives you a little more insight as to what they really, really want. And you can see their level of activity where the RMLS creating a profile does not. And what that does is it sends them listings and that's it. And all you can do is see if they opened it or not, but it doesn't give you any other valuable analytics. So, you know, it was a half-hour Zoom. It really wasn't long or detailed, but
Are there more of them
it
coming
seems,
up, Joe?
yeah, there should be more coming up, and they said they recorded it, but I never got a link to the recording. But I want to share it, and I think it's something we should explore. And I think if anything, it gets people maybe to look at realtor.com instead of Zillow, which I think is positive. And the fact that it's branded to you on your own listings, you know, Zillow takes your listings and then brands it to the 3 people that pay them, right? It's just, it's not, and then, you know, if they, depending on how they come in, they give them out as leads. So uh, I have faith. What there's speculation is they provided like HomeBot for like a year and then they took it away and it's a paid for platform. I think Remine, we had a higher access and then they took some of it away and it might be back, but they don't want people to jump into this with both feet, use it, enjoy it, and then it's like, okay, now it's $49 a month for, you know, Realtor Plus. And that's sort of the speculation. And because it's late coming to the table, a lot of people have found solutions to keeping their buyers abreast of the market through other platforms that do what this is speculated to do. But I'm going to give it a shot. I might put your name in as a buyer and my email address and just kind of see what you're getting, just to see if it's worth it. But I'm not ready to switch. But I do want to test it and see what it says.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that on here as well. I know we talked about that. And one more topic, okay? And this is one I think you posted this recently, right? HOA docs.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so there's this age-old problem where when you write an offer on an HOA, you know, there's a HOA addendum that says seller will provide the budget, the maintenance history, the maintenance schedule, the CCNRs, the bylaws, 12 to 24 months of minutes. They're supposed to provide all this stuff to the buyer. And what I'm seeing is lots of listing agents that don't want to have their sellers pay this money, 400 or 500 bucks, which they're going to have to pay anyway. And it should be done pre-listing, but they just say, well, there's a website. Here's my seller's login and here's their password. Go hunt it down, because it's going to take someone 6 or 8 hours to find all the minutes and all the things and download it as PDFs, or they just get a condo cert packet and it's all delivered to them and they have to get that. They can't avoid that packet because there's something in there that comes from the HOA that says the seller is in good standing. So at the very least, you need to get that the seller is caught up and in good standing with the HOA.
You need to get the
And then there's a
minutes
little more,
too, and a couple
yeah,
years
and a
of the
little more
minutes.
money for the rest of the docs. But at the very least, they need that. And they just send it over and say, here, you have full access. Go find it.
Mm-hmm.
I that's not the intent of what that document, that's not how I interpret it. How about you?
Yeah. I hate this subject. I think it's also
Yeah.
why I hate condos, right? Um, but I personally don't deal with this area a lot. I want to put this out there, and I don't think there's a great solution because it brings about the whole debate of is sending a link enough, or do you have to personally physically deliver every document? And I hate the conversation. I really do. I think now, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. At some point, I mean, the buyer signing saying yes, you delivered all of the following documents to me. So it's hard for me to imagine, even if you sent a link and they're signing that they got all those documents, how they could have recourse on you. But I know I've sat through the classes and I see the comments here. You're supposed to individually deliver each of those documents, right? Isn't that the sentiment?
Well, from the listing perspective, I believe that if the seller is obligated to deliver it to the buyer, they deliver it to the buyer in PDF form, and then the buyer signs, I am in receipt of this. It's kind of like driving through the country and you see like a fruit stand and you walk up and say, hey, I'd like one of those green cardboard cartons of raspberries. And they're like, okay, great, $5. And you pay them $5. And then the farmer turns around and says, okay, they're way over there on those vines, get yourself some gloves and go pick them, go find everything you need, fill it up. That's not the
Yeah.
intent. The
Uh-huh.
seller is supposed to deliver it and they're not. So to either lazy real estating or to save the seller money, which is inevitable, if the house closes, they're going to have to pay for some of this at the very least. Uh, so why not do it preemptively? Because there's lots of great information there. If you are part of an HOA, what are the things you need to know? Do they restrict the number of pets you can have, the number of dogs, the size, the breed? Is there a rental cap? Is there a waiting list? What does that look like? Is there a waiting list for additional parking spot? Um, is there a special assessment? Is it in litigation? Are they talking about a HOA increase? Like,
Mm-hmm.
are there
Oh yeah,
additional storage lockers?
absolutely. Nobody's questioning that they need to look through all these documents, Joe. No one's questioning. I think that the debate is how who accesses them, how do they access them? Is it realistic that the seller downloads, 5,000 pages and then somehow sends them to the buyer? Hey, Scott Galloway made an interesting comment. He said, I was in a Zoom class on this very subject 2 weeks ago, and the lawyer who specializes in analyzing these docs said, only one time in my entire career has the listing agent supplied all the required updated documents. So I thought that was just an interesting take. Yeah,
Yeah.
again, We do it the right way in my world. I don't end up doing it. I've got a co-agent that deals with this. It's not my favorite subject.
Yeah, it's not mine either, but I wish it would be mandated that to describe delivery, because sharing a link where all the access is, look, can someone find all the documents, but that's not delivery. This isn't IKEA. Don't send me a box of a bunch of like chopsticks and then I'm going to make a table out of it. I mean, send me the friggin' table. And then I want to look at that table for quality and everything else. Don't,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, hey, I
just-
got a book you should read. Here's an address. Go here, and it's a library, and you have to go find it and check it out. And I mean, rather than just giving you the book, it just
Yeah.
I think it's
I
lazy.
agree. And most of the sentiment agrees with you, Joe. Most of it agrees and says you have to physically deliver the documents. So, yeah. Well, on that note, on that fun one, I think we should wrap up.
I do too. I think we talked a lot about a lot of big topics. The one we didn't talk about was RMLS came out with an app. You or I haven't really played around with it much, but they're really trying to provide value. I did have a class that talked about the app, and it does some really great things because when you're on your app, it left off on when you were on your PC. So whatever search you had and the stuff you say, it's like there.
That's
So I
cool.
think there's some benefits. I'm excited about learning more.
Yeah. They're doing some great stuff for us. Yeah. Good. Good.
Okay.
Well, this has been a great show, Joe. Let's kick off 2026. We're almost through the end of January. Let's make it a great year. Let's make it a great year.
Awesome.
We'll do a few more of these shows as we get some new content and some fun stuff to talk about, some interesting guests. And we'll keep at it. This was episode 169. We've been doing this a long time. We're not quitting anytime soon.
Yep. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Portland Real Estate Podcast, Oregon and Washington's #1 show for cutting-edge real estate discussions. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to the members of Masters in Real Estate, a private and exclusive Facebook group, and the #1 source for all real estate topics. Thanks for being there, gang. I love you. Finally, I want to thank our faithful listeners. Without an audience, we're just two guys talking to each other. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so the new episodes automatically come to you. Make it great.